Is there anything in the Bible that you yourself have an issue with? Okay, so it took you reading the Bible to realize that those things were bad for you?
Yeah, it actually did. I
Couldn't
didn't
figure this out on your own?
No, Ted Bundy could be redeemed. God doesn't kill children.
What do you think the Passover was? Yahweh sets up a whole system in the Old Testament where you slaughter animals just so he's able to forgive you.
Today's special guest is author, speaker, consultant Dave Kahle. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, author, speaker, consultant. That's what I do. So I write. I have I publish three what we call e-zines or newsletters, you might say, electronic newsletters. So one is for salespeople called Sell Better. That's a weekly publication. One is for sales leaders called Lead Better, and one is for Christian business people called Christian Business Insights. So I do that. I write books and blog posts and so on. I have a couple podcast shows myself. One is called Practical Wisdom for sales leaders, and the other is called Christian Business Insights, the same as the easy. And I consult with not so much with individuals, but with companies. So that's what I do. Keeps me busy.
Awesome. Business is interesting. How is business doing? Is it booming? Is it? Are we on a lull here? How's business?
Yeah. So I'm on the tail end of my career. I'm at a point where I'm working less than 40 hours, and that's okay with me. Certainly not traveling the way I used to. I mean, I used to do 300 flights a year, So that's really. So that's gone away, but I'm at a pace where I'm very comfortable and able to do good things. Yeah, I think it's good.
Good. So you mentioned Christian business. Sorry, there's cats. Christian business. How does that fit in? How does that work?
Wow, what a big question. Well, the world of business, if you're going to be successful in business, then you ought to study the best practices and roll them into your routines.
Okay.
And that's true for any business. However, if you're a Christian, you have a second sense of piece of responsibility, and that is to conduct yourself and your business in a way that brings glory to God and reflects on that commitment to hopefully the commitment to Christ.
And how does business show a commitment to Christ?
Yeah, so a lot of different ways. The first way is through their adherence to certain biblical principles. Okay, so for example, so we have a couple good examples, in the world out there, like Chick-fil-A, is a great example. Hobby Lobby. So here's an example. Hobby Lobby, who took a case to the Supreme Court on the government mandating that they provide contraceptives to their employees.
Correct.
So that violated a principle, and they stood for that principle. So there are principles of Christian business, and the first thing is to adhere to those principles: integrity, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those kinds of things. So that's first, but that's just the beginning. I mean, there's a whole journey ahead of that.
Where does the Hobby Lobby specifically fit into the Bible, that decision?
Well, it's the decision of requiring the Hobby Lobby to provide contraceptives to unmarried women, and that would be,
Right.
I think that's where Hobby Lobby drew the line. They said that's promoting sex outside of marriage, and we're not going to do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
So they're going to control their
take on
employees
it.
is what they're doing there.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm not privy to the inside workings, but that's my take on it as an
Right.
outsider looking at it from the
Right. And
outside.
I don't think that a company should control their employees' bedroom habits.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of weird. They
Yeah,
should
it probably
probably,
it probably is, and I don't think they'd say they're doing that. They just don't want to be forced to pay for it.
right,
That
because
was
they're
the
gonna
issue. That was the issue.
exactly they're trying to
Yeah.
control what's going on in the bedroom for their employees because they don't want their employees to be having promiscuous sex outside of marriage, which I guess is against the biblical law there. So
Well, I
as
think
far
they
as
just didn't want to be forced to pay for contraceptives. I don't know that
right, because
they,
they don't
yeah,
believe in the
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, weird. When a business controls its employees that drastically, that's very weird to me. But also the business model of Jesus. You mentioned the loving your neighbor or loving each other thing,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, or being kind. I can't remember exactly what it was. Something
Hmm.
that Jesus like. But what about the give to the poor Jesus parts,
Yeah,
where Jesus
yeah,
says, "Give everything you own to the poor"? It doesn't seem like a very good business model.
yeah. Well, the business model is bigger than just the ministry of Christ. I mean, all the way back to the very first moments of creation, there is the beginning of a business model. So,
Oh,
yeah, oh
okay.
yeah, for example, so here's an example. God made Adam and Eve,
Hmm.
and he gave Adam a lifetime job, lifetime purpose, and he said, Adam, I want you to manage the garden and take
Oh,
care of it.
okay.
Okay, so that's a lifetime challenge. It's going to fill his life with lots of different things to do. And then a little bit later, he says, God says, Adam, I got your first job. I want you to name the animals, and
Hmm.
I'll help. I'll bring them to you, and you name them. And that seemed like just a simple little incident, but it was really precedent setting, because in
Hmm.
that precedent, well, we have a precedent that God then followed for the rest of the Bible, and that is He gives mankind, or a man or a woman, a task, and then works with them to complete that task. So
Hmm.
that's provides a place for an engagement and interaction with God in the tasks and jobs that you're given. He's going to work with you. That's how you're going to interact and engage with God. So at the beginning, there's just Adam and Eve, but as people grew, there became businesses just because there's now more people, and it's in the world of business where that is probably uh, more the issue than not. I tell people, if you want to grow close to God, start a business,
Hmm.
because the constant decisions, the ebb and flow, the ups and downs will force you to grow closer to God. So there's something about business and in God's master plan that has a very, very important role.
That's a lot there. So how does the business grow you closer to God? I'm very curious how that
Yeah,
works
yeah. So because you have decisions to make,
because
you
there's
have
decisions.
you have ups and downs, you have adversity, and there's lots of times where you just don't know what to do,
Yeah,
and you
for
say,
sure.
Lord, help me on this. Will you help me on this? Or Lord, what should
Oh,
I do about that? And
I see.
it forces
S-
you into a communication with God. I
So
mean, that's
you're,
if you
yeah.
if you're a Christian. If you're not, then you try to do it on your own. But if you're a Christian, then you have a relationship with God that you can count on.
So that the struggles in the
Yes,
business
yes,
reach a level to where you cry out to God, and that's what gets you closer to God. Am I getting this?
exactly. Yeah,
So
that's
if we didn't
exactly
have
right.
the
Yeah,
struggles in business, then you
yeah.
wouldn't be getting closer to God. So the struggles in business are godly.
Wow. I don't know that I'd say exactly that, but probably. I'd have to think about that a bit.
Weird, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
let's go back to the beginning here.
Okay.
You mentioned the Adam and Eve story there.
Yeah. Hmm.
What I see in that story is if God is the employer and Adam is the employee,
Hmm.
I see that the employer has set up the employee to fail. Why
Oh.
would the employer set up the employee to fail? We've got the tree. He built the tree. He put it in the middle of the garden,
Hmm.
made it look like fruit for one. I mean,
Hmm.
that's just weird. And then he let the bad guy in to convince them to do the wrong thing.
Hmm.
God set up his employees to fail. He put this whole situation together for them.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
had employees and I did not want them to fail, I wouldn't put something in the middle of their workday that would completely destroy them all together in their families and their families and forever, forever. And then I wouldn't let some conniving little turd in to convince them to do this. That
Yeah.
just doesn't make any sense as an employer.
Yeah.
Is that how you would run your business? Or would you keep things away from the employees to help them to make them do better? Wouldn't let somebody in there to convince them to do the wrong things. You'd get that guy out of there. And it doesn't sound like a good business to me.
So is there a question in there, Michael?
Yeah. Would
Okay.
you run your business that way? Or does that sound like a good idea to you?
Well, when you run a business, you hire people
Huh.
and you give them responsibilities.
Okay.
And sometimes they're not sometimes it doesn't go well. Sometimes, I mean,
Oh, yeah, well,
People
well,
struggle with those
for
responsibilities.
sure.
Like, for example, I spent much of my life up until age 40 or so as a salesperson.
Hmm.
Now, I was hired to do certain things, but that didn't mean it went smoothly. I mean, I had failures, I had adversity,
Right.
I had things I had to overcome. So it wasn't a matter of my employer putting me in a situation where I might fail. That is the situation where we all face. We all may fail, and
Right. We
so
all may fail.
yeah.
Exactly.
So it's just part of life.
It
If you're
is.
gonna have a job, if you're gonna do anything of substance, there's a likelihood that you might not do it perfectly,
Right.
and
So Adam
so
might have failed at naming the trees and naming the animals. Adam might have failed at all kinds of things, but God purposefully put things in the way of Adam, knowing that he would fail specifically in that area. So
well, I
I
don't
would not
again,
put things in the way of
yeah,
my employees
yeah.
to have them fail. I keep things out of the way so they can do better, right? That makes more sense as a business owner. And then if we're going to hire and fire people, we're as a business owner,
Hmm.
we've got the devil. I wouldn't hire the devil. That's
Okay, yeah,
ridiculous. I look at his
yeah.
resume, I can see what he's doing here. This is not a good guy. He's not going to be a good fit. He's not going to
Hmm.
get along with some of the employees.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
God looks at the resume of the devil and says, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and hire this guy, not just hire him, but I'm going to let him loose on my employees to do as he wishes, to try and
Hmm.
tempt them
Hmm.
into doing bad things. I
Hmm.
wouldn't hire a bad employee. God
Hmm.
did. God knew
Yeah.
the resume of Satan,
Hmm.
but he still hired that employee. Does that sound like a good idea to you? A good
Well,
business decision?
yeah, I'm not going to question God's motives. I would
Well, we
say, though,
should definitely, first off, we should definitely question God's motives, but we can, as humans, decipher whether these things are good ideas or bad. Now, would you hire the devil? Let's just go with that. Would you hire the devil, knowing what his resume looked like?
to work for me? Yeah, no,
Anybody?
yeah, of course not.
No, yeah,
But
why? Why not, though? Why not?
I'm not God.
I
I'm
didn't ask if
not.
you were God, Dave.
Yeah,
Why would you
yeah.
not hire the devil?
Well, number one, I couldn't because
Well,
I'm
why
just a
wouldn't you,
man.
though?
Well, because he's the deceitful, because he's the father of lies,
Because you
deceitful.
see his resume, right? You know what's on that resume.
You might say that in a sense. You
Yeah,
could say
in a
that.
sense,
Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
hiring him, right? We're
Yeah.
gonna
Right.
question
Right.
him as
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
employee, sorry. So God decided it would be a good idea to hire him anyways. We wouldn't do it. That doesn't make much sense to us, but God decided to do it anyways. I don't think that's a good way to run a business. I don't think
Well,
that's a
it's
good way
not.
to run a
Yeah.
business
So
at
it's.
all. And
Yeah.
then
I
the
think
the, the punishment to the employees.
your
Uh-huh.
analogy is a little off, Michael. God
Okay.
didn't.
Help me.
God didn't
Help me.
hire Satan. Satan existed. Satan
God
was in
created Satan, right?
existence. Well, it's at some point he
Yeah.
created Satan
Yeah.
as an
He knew his
angel. Yeah,
resume ahead of
absolutely.
time before he created him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So he did.
He created an angel who turned
Dave.
into Satan. But
Dave.
at the moment when he created Adam and Eve, Satan pre-existed that moment. So it
Right,
wasn't
because he
God
had made
hiring
him for
him
that
and
purpose.
putting him into that position. He was already there.
God created Satan for a purpose, correct?
Well, you have to ask God.
Well, God creates everything. Is that correct?
Yes.
Does God know everything before he creates it?
That's a good question. It depends on our understanding of know. What do you
Hmm.
mean? What do you mean? Does he have knowledge of how everybody's going to act? I mean, is your question relative to people, or is it relative
Did
to?
God know how Satan was going to turn out when he created him as an angel?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know that I've ever thought about that.
Hmm.
Honestly,
Well,
don't
he's either
know.
incompetent there or it's his fault. I mean,
Hmm.
it's his fault either way there. Either he didn't know or he did. And I'm going to go with he did because the Bible tells me that God knows all things.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with that. So God
Okay.
knew what the devil would do
Yep.
ahead of
Okay.
time.
Maybe, but okay.
Yeah, not a good idea. Doesn't sound like a good idea to me. So let's go to the punishment for the employees. The employees have now disobeyed the boss, and now the boss is coming in to dish out some punishments. Now, if your employees disobeyed you one time after you told them not to do something,
Hmm.
what do you do? Is it a write-up? Is it a verbal warning? What do you do?
Well, again, I'm having a difficult time making the direct analogy between an employer and God in
You're telling me that
creation.
God hired Adam to do a job. So
No,
there, therefore,
you
we're just
said that.
taking
You
this
said that.
employee.
I didn't say that. I said
100%,
God.
Dave. You told me that God hired Adam to name the animals and to tend the garden. You told me that, Dave.
I didn't say hired him. I say he gave him the
Hmm.
lifetime purpose of
Hmm.
tending the garden and creation,
That's
and
fine.
then
We can skip that then.
very specifically, he gave him a job.
So yeah.
So yeah, okay.
So that's I'm just kind of going off there, Dave. You mentioned him as an employee, so I'm just kind of going off of that. And how would we
I
treat our
think,
employees, Dave? Would it
yeah,
be
I
would we
think
write them up after one thing? Disciplinary action would be verbal warning. What would it be?
so. You have to keep in mind the big picture, and the big
Okay,
picture is
big
God. Yeah,
picture.
did God know that Adam was going to fail? Probably.
Yes,
And
he knew the failure.
he had the solution. He had the solution. He
Dave,
had the Messiah. He had Jesus Christ, who was going to redeem everybody from their failures. And
Dave.
so if
I
so,
have the
I see that's
solution,
something
Dave.
as an employer I don't have. I don't have that. I don't have
You
the ability
well,
to redeem my employees
you
totally
can forgive
the
them,
way that
right?
Christ will redeem each of us.
You can
It's
forgive
more
your
than
employees, though.
forgiveness.
What is it?
I can, sure, sure.
What is it more than forgiveness, Dave? Because God's still got a book of wrong things we did. So he hasn't forgave
Well,
and forgot.
oh,
So where's the for Mhm.
actually, Michael, he has.
He has
He
what?
has forgiven. He has forgiven and forgotten those who follow him.
So is there a book of life or and does God keep records? Because Revelation 20:12 says the dead were judged according to what they had done as recorded in the books.
Yes.
So that sounds like God is
So,
keeping records still.
so one thing that you would have done would be to connect with Christ or not. That would have been in the book of records. So if you have not connected with Christ, if you haven't claimed
Judged by
him,
what they had
created a
done.
relationship with him, if you haven't created a relationship with him, then yeah, then your every action is going to be exposed. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, but if you have created a relationship with Christ, then he's wiped all that out, and
It's
God
gone.
forgives
So
and
this book,
forgets.
this is telling me that he recorded things in a book, the things we've done, but you're telling me it's all wiped out. I'm telling you, the Bible says opposite there, Dave.
I don't think so. The Bible says
Revelation
if
20:12, very clearly, the dead
yeah,
were judged according to what they had done as recorded in the books.
yes, and one thing that they could do or choose not to
Hmm.
would be create a relationship with Christ. And if they have, is that in
It
the
doesn't
book? Of
say
course
that.
it is. It's a big it's you just said they're judged according to what they have done.
Right.
One thing
As
they
recorded
could
in the
have
books.
done, one thing they could have done
Mhm.
was accept Christ. So if they accept Christ, then then that's a big part of how they're judged.
So I can accept
Absolutely.
Christ and he's still going to judge me by the things I do, correct?
No,
No.
that one thing, accepting Christ, m makes everything else go away. I mean, all
I
your
can do
sins are
whatever I want
forgiven.
once I've accepted Christ, and God won't judge me for it.
Let's let's let's
That's
talk about two
dangerous.
different things. First of all, let's talk
Uh,
about sins or your life before you accepted Christ. That's all done away with. I
so
mean,
okay,
born again, as you know, Michael, born again is a big issue in the New Testament. You are born again, which means you're born with a free slate. You're like an
right.
infant. You're like a
So can I
child.
sin
No matter how
after I'm
old you
born
are,
again?
everything, everything that you have done prior to that is gone. Then,
Great. Yeah.
as long as you maintain a relationship, now you can get so hardened in a negative behavior, a bad behavior, that you take yourself out from under his provision. It's called a
Huh.
reprobate mind. And there are people, you may even know some, I think we probably all know some, who are so hardened in their opinions and their behavior
Uh-huh.
that they cannot accept reality. And
What
that's
reality are we not
God says
accepting?
he gives them over to a reprobate mind so that, yeah, they take themselves out from under
We just said God did
the
it.
grace of
So they
Christ.
take themselves part of the way, and
Yeah,
then God says, "Screw you, I'm done with you," and takes them all the way.
exactly. Yeah,
That's
that's exactly
ridiculous.
right.
That's not a good
Yeah,
relationship.
well,
That's not helpful at all. That's not what I would do
well,
for my
it
employees if
may
I had
not be helpful.
employees.
It may not be helpful from your perspective, but it is what the
Right.
Bible has to say.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in the Bible I don't find helpful for sure. So you mentioned accept reality. Can't accept reality. God refuses to allow them to accept reality because they don't want to accept reality. And what is this reality that people are not accepting?
Their own sinfulness.
Their own
The fact
sinfulness,
that yeah, the fact that what they're doing is sin in God's eyes.
such
They,
as,
they don't ex well, there's lots of things. Could be anything. Could be maybe they're thieves. Maybe they
what are they stealing?
steal
Like
all
particular,
the time.
like Robin Hood
Well,
style, or are we talking candy bars? Are we talking food so our family can survive? What kind of stealing we're talking about here?
let's talk about people who break into people's home invaders.
Home invasion.
So
Okay. So
okay,
they
if you
don't
want an
know they're doing wrong.
example,
Is that what you're telling me? They don't know they're
yes,
doing this
they're so
bad thing.
hardened, they're so hardened in their soul, in their heart, they
Uh-huh.
don't see it as wrong, they just see it as another thing to do.
You're telling
And
me
when
that criminals don't know
you can
they're
harden
criminals.
your heart. Pardon me?
Dave, you're telling me that criminals
Oh,
don't know they're criminals?
no, what I'm saying is
Okay, okay,
people can be so set
okay.
in a sinful pattern that they don't see it as
Thievery.
sin.
They're so set in their thievery, they don't see
And
the thievery
that's
as
one
wrong.
example. That's one example, but it could
I
be
don't think there's
anything.
thieves that don't know that thievery is wrong. I don't see that. I know they know it's wrong
Well,
because
they
they do it
may,
in the shadows and they try not to be caught. So I'm pretty sure that thieves know thievery is wrong. I'm pretty sure, Dave.
and I'm pretty sure they harden their heart to the point where it doesn't bother them.
Okay, so they harden. Okay, let's break through this. They harden their heart so
Okay.
it doesn't bother them. Now, how else can we say that so it makes a little more sense? They
Well, I think that
they
makes sense. I think we all know that. I mean, I
they
think
convince
everybody knows
themselves that they're the one in the
that
right.
people
You
can
know,
convince themselves, yeah,
there
of
you go.
anything.
There you go.
They can convince themselves of
That sounds
anything.
better than
Absolutely.
hardening one's heart. Absolutely. That's weird. That's a
Well,
weird thing to say. You've hardened your heart
well,
towards this. No,
maybe.
I've convinced myself that this is the right decision or it's better for me, and I don't care about them. I mean, that makes more sense than the whole hardening the heart thing. That doesn't really. Anyways, so
It's
God
just
doesn't
another
like
way of
people that
saying the same
steal
thing,
things.
Michael.
So, what's up?
I said it's just another way of saying the same thing. A
Yeah,
Christian
but it makes
would
more
talk
sense if
about
we
a heart,
get rid of the whole hard
and you
heart thing.
don't, but that's okay.
It's just weird. It's just weird. But
It's a very similar concept, so it's okay.
so God doesn't like thieves. What else does God not like?
Well, the whole notion of
Uh-huh.
sin is missing the mark, not doing everything perfectly. So we all sin, and we all sin. But when we take on a sin and make it a habit, make it a habitual thing, and we don't feel the need to repent and change it, then that becomes an issue,
Why?
which is where we
What if
started,
I want
Michael.
to be a thief my whole life? What's going to happen?
Well, you're going to be a thief. At some point, you might get punished for it, but I
By
mean that's
man?
your
Yeah, I might get
choice.
caught, thrown in jail for sure.
You might,
After
yeah.
that, though? What happens after I've gone my whole life thieving? I
Hmm.
finally stole something so big it locks me up in jail for the rest of my life, and then I just die in prison. What happens?
Okay. Well, I am not going to pretend to judge people. That's God's choice.
Well, you just said thieves are.
So
You're already doing
he
that.
would
You're already
judge
judging
them.
people. Thieves are bad. We've judged them. Done. You've done it. So now
Okay,
I'm
but
dead. Now what happens?
that's different. That's different than saying what's going to happen to them on their death. Those are two
Well, I've
different
sinned,
degrees
Dave.
of judgment. So if you're talking about judgment as a human being makes towards somebody else, okay. Judgment as God makes for the everlasting uh, disposition of this person, I'm not talking that. That's
Yeah.
up to God, not me. So there's a difference in distinction. You're bright enough to see the nuances there, I'm sure.
How many thieves do you think there are in heaven, Dave?
What, I mean, how could I possibly answer that
Right. I don't
question?
think there's very many thieves in heaven. I don't think God allows thieves in there. Those are part of the people that he doesn't allow into his perfect place. That's weird. That's weird. I don't know why you don't want to answer that one. But let's go back to Jesus for a little bit. You said the
Well,
big picture
wait,
and
let
Jesus.
me ask you, how
Yeah.
many thieves do you think there are in heaven?
I don't
I
think
mean,
there
what's
is a
the
heaven,
number?
Dave.
What's the number?
I don't think there's a heaven, Dave.
Okay, so all right, got it. Understood.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think there's anybody in heaven. I can go with that one.
Okay,
But you went to Jesus. I'm very curious about the Jesus big picture here.
okay.
Explain to me why Jesus is the big picture.
Well, from the very beginning of creation until the very end of Revelation, which evidently you have some awareness of, the story is basically about Jesus. I mean, Jesus is God's son, came to redeem all of us from our sins and offer a path to a relationship with God and everlasting life in heaven.
So the
So
big
he is the
picture,
path.
uh
He's the bridge.
there it is. The big picture is this Jesus path to God,
Yes,
correct?
absolutely. Yes.
And we can't
Jesus
get to
said,
God unless Jesus is there, correct?
Jesus said, and you'll know this,
Yeah, I
he
know, but that's
said,
what I'm asking.
I am
Way,
the
the light, the
way,
truth, and the way.
I
Yeah,
am the way, the truth, and the life. No man goes to the Father except through me. Now that's what he
that's
said. So
that's weird, Dave.
either he's a lunatic, or he didn't know what he was talking about,
Or
or he
imaginary.
said something that was truthful. So I don't
That's
think
weird, though, Dave.
that
Let's dissect that for a second. We can't
it might
get
be
to
weird
God.
to you.
Right, let's
Might
figure
be
out how it's
weird to
not weird then,
you.
Dave. Let's figure
Okay.
out how it's not weird. Okay, so we can't get
Okay.
to God unless Jesus dies.
Yes.
Dave, you don't see the weirdness in that.
No, I don't. If you
Okay,
now,
so God was able to
if you
get with Adam
understand,
and Eve, hang out with them, no problem. God's
hmm
able to hang out with
hmm
Moses face to face as friends do. But for some reason now, Jesus, God, has to kill himself in order to have a relationship with us. Dave, that is the weirdest thing. Do you do that with anybody else
you know,
in your life?
yeah,
Is there anybody that you have to have their kid die so you can have a relationship with them? It's weird, Dave. It's weird.
you know what God said? He said, "My ways are not your ways. As far as the
Yes,
heaven
Dave, we both
is
don't
from the
drown
earth,
kids.
so are my
Yes,
ways different than your ways."
definitely different than
So
our ways.
you're attempting to totally understand the ways and thoughts of God. And because you're a man, Michael, just like I'm a man,
Hmm.
we just don't have the ability to understand the ways of an almighty God. I mean, we don't.
So it doesn't make
We
sense
can
to
see
you either, then,
expressions of
Dave.
it.
That's what
I'm
we're
not
going
saying
here.
that. I'm
Oh, so
saying
it does make
from
sense
his
to you then.
perspective,
Help me explain that. Explain
don't,
it to me
yeah,
if it makes sense
don't,
to you.
okay, don't put words in my mouth and don't interrupt me.
Well, it's one or the
So,
other, Dave. Either you do understand it or you don't. It's very simple.
okay, understand what exactly?
The whole why Jesus has to die in order for us to have a conversation with God when other people are having conversations with God before Jesus even died. Why do we
Because
need
that's
that to happen? It's very weird.
because yeah, because that's what God decided. Because
Okay,
he
so and
decided he decided that there had to be some way because the distance between man and God was so great that there had to be some
What?
bridge between the two. And so the bridge is Jesus Christ, his son.
But
That's why
Moses
Jesus
had a
said,
relationship with him. Moses had a relationship face to face. That's not a big separation
yes,
there.
yeah, that's true. And
Right.
there
So
are
why can't
places
God have a relationship with us like that? Why does he need Jesus to
because
die now?
because he chose to do it that way. He's
Right. That
God,
doesn't
that's
make
what
any
he
sense,
chose.
Dave. Does that make sense to you? We're right back here. Does that make sense to you? Would you do that?
Well, I'm a human being. I'm not
And
God.
we're
Don't
back.
put me
Yeah.
in
No,
God's
we know
place.
you're
I mean,
we know Dave.
I'm not that.
Everybody and everybody's listening knows you're Dave. We all know Dave the human. I've had a David the human on. It was fun. Great guy. Great guy. Save squirrels like that. Um, but you wouldn't do that for anybody, and you don't have a relationship like that with anybody. It's just very weird. And to you, it makes sense. Can you help it make sense to me?
I think unless you understand God, Michael, it won't make sense to you.
You understand God.
If you, well, to the degree that I can. I mean, I spent much of my life studying, and
Uh-huh.
coming to know God better. So it's
Okay.
been an avocation of mine, and but that doesn't mean everybody does it.
Okay. So you know God and you have a relationship with God.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
And do you talk to God and he talks to you?
I talk to God. That's called prayer. When you talk to God. I
With
don't.
talking.
He doesn't talk to me in words. I don't hear him
Oh,
say things, but I feel. I get. What do I want to say? I get nudges. I get ideas that I believe come from him because they're a result of prayer.
is there?
For example, so I'm a writer, and one of the books I've written 13 books. One of them is called the Good Book on Business, which is a description of what the Bible has to say about business. And there were times when I was writing that where I have a very strong sense of don't say it this way, say it a different way, or don't use this word, use a different word. And a strong since I'm a writer, I understand that, but this would be above and beyond a typical kind of thing where I felt that this idea, this notion came from a higher place.
How do you
So I would
know that
say I would say
feeling?
that that's not God. I know that's not God talking to me, but I believe it's God communicating with me. So yeah, He can do it in a number of different ways.
I call those thoughts.
One of the
You
things that
know,
you and maybe you know this. I once did a study of how does God communicate with people. How does is there a pattern? And I look throughout the whole Bible and say, how does God communicate with people? And you know
very
what the
clearly,
answer is?
apparently, and a lot of it.
Any way He wants. Any way
Yeah.
he wants. I
Yeah.
mean, he writes on
There you
walls,
go.
he whispers in people's ears, he does all kinds of things
He shows
to
up face to
communicate.
face.
He
Yeah.
does that too. Yeah, with some people, not with everybody, but yeah. So yeah, he communicates any way he wants. Question is, how do you think he would communicate with you?
Question is, why doesn't he communicate with me, Dave? You have a personal
Well,
relationship
yeah,
with somebody that you
mm,
can't hear, that doesn't talk to you. Is there anybody else in your
yeah.
life that you have a personal relationship that doesn't
There's
talk
only
to
one
you?
God, only one God, and that's the only one.
There's lots of gods out there, Dave. You just got to narrow it down to decipher which one you believe in and which one you want to have a relationship with that they don't talk to you with. It's very weird to me, Dave. It's very weird. So this can you ask him things and he can respond with hints? Is that where we're going here?
Well, he could. I mean, he can respond with hints. He can do all kinds of things. He
Okay,
can
how
bring.
okay.
I've often seen him bring people into my life who
You've
have.
seen him do this.
Yeah, sure, sure. I mean, and
How
every
do you
Christian
see God
has.
bring people into your life, Dave?
Somebody shows up with
Oh, so you
just
don't see God
exact
doing it.
just exactly the word I need to hear or something, So
Encouraging
yeah,
people.
do
Okay.
do I do I see the hand of God pushing him? No, I don't see
No.
because
No.
God's a
Yeah.
spirit.
So it's
But I
just
look at I,
people.
s- but I see the results. I see the results of
You see people,
God.
Dave. You see
Yes, I
people
see
being
people.
kind. You see people being helpful. I don't see a God doing anything, Dave. I see lots of people doing helpful things and heartful
Yeah,
things as well, but
sure.
I do see a lot of helpful hands out there. And it's awesome. I don't understand why it's attributed to an invisible man. Why can't we just give the people that do it the credit? It's so weird. It's like praying for your food. They didn't do God didn't make that food for you. The guy in the kitchen did. The lady's bringing it
Uh,
out to you right now. Why don't you thank them? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's an invisible person that you can't verify is interacting with the real world in any way whatsoever, but we're still saying it's them. I could pick anybody, Dave. It could be
yeah,
Spider-Man. It could be
yeah.
Spider-Man helping everybody out. You know, Spider-Man gives me breath in the morning to wake up.
Here's the difference between God and Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Well, I could tell you some.
God has the Bible, which is,
Oof.
written over a period of 1,000 years, 54 different books that all have the same theme, all going back thousands of years that has been studied by billions of people throughout history. Spider-Man doesn't. So there's evidence
No,
to
no,
warrant a belief in God. Absolutely.
no.
And
We've got over 50 years of
Bible,
Spider-Man going
yeah,
around.
The Bible says that you need to have
People
little
study it.
faith, but it doesn't take
Absolutely.
much. Doesn't take much faith. Faith is small as a mustard seed, but you do have to have a little bit
What
of
can you do
faith.
with that faith, Dave? What can you do with that mustard seed size faith?
Well, you can get to know God, and then therefore
Well, you, Dave,
let him influence your life, and you become a better person. You become more Christ-like in the process.
that's weird. More Christ-like.
That's what, yeah.
Dave, I don't want to be Christ-like. Christ he's a documented child killer, for one. I
Yeah.
don't want to be that. That's not something I strive to be.
Mm.
Um, so with this faith of the mustard seed, you can have a relationship with an invisible man who drowns kids, needs bloodshed for forgiveness, refuses to show up for my birthday party, doesn't send me any money in the mail. I don't get one birthday card. Every year it just goes by. Jesus never sends me a birthday
Yeah.
card. So this mustard seed faith. Is there anything else we can do with it besides pretend we have a relationship with an invisible person? Can we move
Well,
mountains with it like the Bible says?
once you're there, Michael, and clearly you're not, but once you're there, you have a sense of a relationship with an invisible spiritual entity. Absolutely,
Or
there
what else
are
can we
such
do with
things
this
as
faith
spirits.
though? Because the Bible says you
Well,
can move mountains. Is that something you can do with your faith?
yeah. Well, I haven't tried it, but I have seen answers to prayer. It's
Mm,
big answers to prayer. I mean, here's a very good example, Michael.
mm.
So just in the last 2 weeks. So I live in
Yeah.
Sarasota, Florida,
Tell me.
and we had the prospect of the storm of the century coming right at us. It was a
Yep.
category 5
Yep.
storm, and it was directly. I mean, we were going to get a direct hit of category 5,
What
and
did Jesus do?
we had a number of people praying about it. And here's what happened: it hit the land, and then inexplicitly, nobody knows exactly how or why, turned into a category 3, and dissipated its energy, dissipated, and it wasn't nearly as devastating as everybody thought.
Dave, that happens
The,
all the
the,
time.
the Herald Tribune, which is the local secular paper, in their front page headline the next day said, "It's a
Hmm.
miracle. It's a
Oh,
miracle."
whew.
So yeah, that's I mean, again,
Jesus.
that's a secular newspaper. Got nothing to do
That
with
means nothing to me though, Dave. Those kinds of things
well,
happen all the time. What would be miraculous if you took this power from Jesus and went down to the local children's hospital and cleared it out. That would
yeah,
be a miracle, David. That would be awesome. You know what else would be
and
awesome? If you could have him show up and talk to us right now on this live air podcast, well, not really live, but recorded
yeah,
podcast. That
yeah.
would be great. That would be a miracle,
So
David.
so
I can't see that normal natural thing as a miracle.
yeah.
Jesus
Well,
didn't sign the weather saying,
yeah.
"Psh, I did this, signed Jesus." There's nothing
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
So how
so I feel sorry for you, Michael, that you're unable to see that,
I
because
refuse to
again,
see it as a miraculous thing, Dave. I can't just pick and say, yes, Jesus did that. You know what, Dave? I think the Ninja Turtles did that.
yeah,
They put a weather machine in the sewers and pushed it back. You didn't even see it happen, and you don't know they exist because they hide their presence from you. But you can have a relationship with them. You just got to bring some pizza down to the sewer.
yeah, that's a
It's
little
just as
silly,
silly,
Michael. I
Dave.
mean, that's a little silly.
That's
You
just
don't
as
have
silly, Dave, as an invisible man moving the wind.
no, it isn't, because you have recorded history. You have
I have recorded history of Ninja Turtles.
thousands of years of the
Yeah.
Bible,
I'm sorry
people
you don't
writing,
believe. It
so
makes me sad The Ninja
It
Turtles, they
does
saved things for you. They saved your
yeah,
city. You don't even acknowledge it. That makes me sad.
yeah. That's
Sorry, Dave.
that's a little silly, Michael. I was hoping
Dave,
we'd
you
have
have an invisible man
hoping
that
we have
moves the weather.
hoping that we had a little higher level conversation, but it's okay.
Dave, we're talking about an invisible man here. So, I mean, the conversation can go all over the place. But why did Jesus have to die? Because he had to have a relationship with us. God needed a relationship with us.
Yes.
Was God able to have a relationship with us without his kid dying?
Well, so you need to understand there are different times in the Bible. There was the time of the patriarchs, which was Abraham and Jacob and so on, and they had a relationship. They many of them spoke with God, and then there's the time of the prophets where God didn't speak very much to people. He spoke through the prophets, you know. And there was the law of Moses, the Mosaic law. God spoke through that, and then came Christ, and it was the culmination of a plan that brought Christ to us. And so now we're living in the Christian age. So do people have a relationship with God outside of Christ? Well, he says not. He said, "I am the way, the truth, the light. No man comes to the Father except through me." Which
But
means
people did,
if
though.
you don't accept Christ, man, you're not going to have a relationship with God.
It's weird. That's a whole nother weird thing. But people did
Yeah,
have a relationship with God before Christ. We mentioned it. Moses and Adam and Eve, they all had relationships.
exactly.
They
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
need Jesus. So
yeah.
why did God not continue on that motion? Why did God
Ask,
now he needs the death of himself in
yeah,
order to have a relationship?
you have to ask him.
Dave, I ask him all kinds of questions. The dude never
Yeah.
answers. He
Yeah,
never answers me.
it's because you don't have a relationship with him,
Dave,
Michael.
can you ask
You
him
need to
questions for me?
I can ask, it doesn't mean he's going to answer.
Man, see, that's the thing is you have a relationship with somebody that might answer or might not. I have
Yep.
relationships with people that we can call up right now on the phone.
And they
That's
may
what I
answer
call
and
a
they may not.
relationship.
Yeah,
It's really
okay.
weird.
So yeah,
It's
so
really
you
weird to
again,
me.
you're not it's too bad, Michael, that you can't see the spiritual uh world,
Can God show me the
around you.
spiritual world, David?
Pardon me?
Can God show me the spiritual world?
If he chooses to, I think he already has. I mean, he
Well,
has
Dave, I haven't seen it, so
through the Bible. I think you see
that's
it
not
through the
spiritual
Bible.
world. Those are words, Dave.
Yes, that's right. But they're God's words,
Okay,
and
that's great.
his
This
words live. His words have a
it's not
power
helpful though.
beyond just human beings.
Dave,
Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't see it.
Well,
God tells me to,
I'm sorry you don't.
God
I'm
tells
sorry.
me to kill
Honestly, I'm
witches,
really
Dave.
sorry you don't. I'm really
Is
sorry
that
you don't.
wisdom? Is it wisdom to kill witches or stone disobedient children to death, drown people that don't listen to you and their children, set wild animals to tear apart children? Do you think these are, wisdom, good ideas, a good source of morality?
Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to, so it's
All the things
hard
that
for me to
God has done
say.
in the Bible. You're referring to
Yeah,
the Bible as this amazing book, and I'm telling you,
yeah,
in there,
yeah,
God has done disgusting things,
yeah.
such as drown
From your
children.
perspective, yeah. So yeah,
Do you think it's bad to drown kids, Dave?
just watched
Dave, you said
just
my
watched
perspective. Dave, this is
yeah.
also your perspective. You do not think it's a
So
good idea to drown kids, right, Dave?
it's not no, it's not a good idea
Thank
for
you.
us
Phew,
today
scared me
to
for what do
drown
you
kids.
wait?
Yeah.
What do you mean us today, Dave? Was it a good idea back then to drown kids?
Uh, so what specific
The
instance are you
flood. Let's
referring
go with
to?
the flood,
Help me
Dave.
to.
Let's go with the flood. Is it
Okay.
okay to drown the children in the flood? All the puppies, all the kittens, all the babies, they needed to be drowned in the vengeful rainwater?
Yeah. God destroyed people, destroyed the earth because they were so evil.
David,
And
are the puppies, the kittens, and the
I mean,
babies evil?
they were all part of the evil world. Yeah, it was evil and had to be
Wow.
destroyed. And God said, "That's it. I'm done with this. I
Why would God
created
create
you.
evil puppies?
I made you. I
Yeah,
created
I
you.
know.
I made you
I
to have a
regret making
relationship
you.
with me. And look how you've turned out.
Wow.
You've turned out so incredibly evil that I can't put up with you anymore.
Would
That's
you do that
that's
to your kids,
no.
Dave?
I'm saying I'm kind of paraphrasing what I think God would have said, but that's basically the understanding I
Is that
have
what you
as
have done,
to the
though,
flood.
Dave? Would you have, like,
But I'm not
snapped your
God. I
fingers?
didn't create the world.
I didn't ask you if you were
I
God, Dave. That's such a weird answer.
yeah,
Would
yeah.
you
So
snap your fingers and have them go away, or would you drown them, Dave?
it wouldn't be up to me. I'm not
I'm
God.
asking
I
you,
don't
it is
make
up
those
to you right this
decisions.
second, Dave. Right this
No,
second.
I'm not
What
gonna.
moral decision would you make? Would you snap them out of existence or would you drown them?
I wouldn't have that decision to make because I'm not God.
I know why you don't want to
And
answer it, Dave.
that's
And it's
honestly that's
okay.
one. I
At
think
least
that's
I
one
want
of
you to
the.
see that how gross and disgusting it is that somebody would do that. Choose that option instead of the other options. God has countless options, but God chose to force the vengeful rainwater into the mouths of babies and puppies and kittens until they
Yeah,
died.
yeah.
And you know that's
He sure
horrible.
did.
We both
He
know that's
sure did.
horrible.
He sure did. Yeah. And I would have to say it's because mankind became so evil.
That
You know, and
doesn't give
it's
him
too bad.
reason to drown the Dave.
How do you
There,
know that? How
I'm
are you
telling you
putting
right
your
now, Dave, because you would not choose that, Dave. You would not choose that.
you're putting yourself, and
Yes, I am.
I think this
Yes.
is the flaw. This is the
I would make
flaw, I
way more
think, of
moral decisions than God.
yeah.
I wouldn't drown kids to start with. God can change hearts and minds, can he not, Dave?
With he can
He can.
prod people, he can
He
nudge
can
people,
change
certain,
hearts and
but
minds. He does it all
everybody
the time in
everybody
prison. I
has
hear about it every day,
everybody has free will. And so
Dave.
if you choose to follow
Hmm.
God, he will work with you. If you choose not to, you'll
He will
become
drown you.
you'll become hardened and eventually not just have not the ability to see him or accept him. That's too bad. That's a
And
reprobate
then what
mind that I
happens?
talked about earlier.
But see, the
And
problem is God doesn't show up, Dave. If God showed up and said hi, then he'd have a lot more people in a relationship with him. I would have a lot of questions for him that he would
yeah,
actually
sure,
be able to answer instead of me having
sure.
to talk to the ceiling.
And
It's very
I
annoying.
would say he has shown up.
He
He's shown
hasn't,
up.
Dave. I haven't seen him.
He's shown up in the Bible. He's
I
shown up
wasn't
through
there,
the.
Dave. That's the most ridiculous answer. I was
He's
not
shown
there for
up.
the Bible parts. Were you?
Yeah, yeah. He's shown up.
He didn't show
Well,
up.
it's his word.
He
His
didn't show
word
up for me, Dave.
lives. Well, you haven't connected yet.
I haven't
That's too
exactly. Where
bad.
is he
That's
at?
too bad. Yeah.
Can
But
we
not
connect
only
with him
that
now?
has he shown up through the Bible, but he's shown up through the lives of the people who follow him.
Those are
You
again
know?
as people, Dave. I can't.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's people or Spider-Man or the Ninja Turtles. I can't decipher between that and your God. It's weird. It's weird. So what I'm going to go with is what I see, and that's people doing good things sometimes, just for the sake of doing good things for helping
Mm-hmm.
others. Kudos, awesome, good job. I don't
Mm-hmm.
need Ninja Turtles, Spider-Man, or Jesus in order to do good things for people, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
That's just where I'm at.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
But go ahead, finish your thought there, and then we'll close it out here.
Yeah, so God has shown up. He's shown up in the Bible and His Word, and He's shown up through the lives of His followers, the people who follow Him. There's something about just think. Going back to the apostles. Here's 12 people, pretty uneducated. Kind of blue collar, we'd call them today,
Hmm.
and yet they put their lives on the line. They lived their whole life. Uh, uh, Proclaiming Christ. What would have caused them to do that? And
What
were
would have
they
caused the
under
people to
some
fly planes into the buildings? People do crazy
well,
things for belief. That's just the way we are as humans. I mean, it
so but
doesn't give it reason to be true, though, Dave. That's what I'm going. Is the
but it's
extremes
but
don't
it's
make it
one
true.
it's one indicator. It's one indication. There are indications. There's evidence. And
Mm,
if you have an open mind, you see that
pretend.
evidence and
You
begin
just
to assemble
pretend it's
that evidence
evidence.
together. And
Yeah,
one piece of evidence is the Bible and the impact that it's had on billions of
man.
people
Spider-Man comics have its
throughout
impacts on
generations.
billions and billions of people for
Yeah,
generations.
yeah, no,
So, I
that's
mean, it's the
silly.
same thing, Dave.
That is silly, Michael. I mean,
It's not.
that's
Spider-Man saves kids. He doesn't drown them.
yeah,
I think it's
right.
silly to think that God's good when he drowns kids. That's
Yeah.
silly. But that's
Well,
beside the point,
I
David.
think your analogy to Spider-Man is really truly. Come on.
Of course.
You're more
It's just
intelligent
so
than that.
silly, right? It's not like he's invisible. All right. Thank you, Dave. This has been a fun conversation. Where can we find you at? And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
www.davekahle, Kahle
that one.
dot com.
Mhm.
And that you'll find, everything's there. That's a good starting point.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. Take care. Stay safe out there, man.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
That's all the show there is for you today. Thanks for listening. As always, you can find all things BSW related on the show's website at thebiblesayswhat.com. If you like what you heard and want to help keep the recording light on, simply go to thebiblesayswhat.com and sign up to be a supporter of the show. Your episodic tithes of $1 or more will get you early access to each new episode on Wednesdays instead of Sundays. And no matter which platform you use to listen to your podcasts, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on the next episode. Until then, would you kindly share and review the show?